Okay, so welcome everyone. Really delighted that you're able to join this workshop on intersectionality and IGC commitments. I'm Fleur Hayworth. I'm responsible for the IGC Secretariat based in Geneva. And I'm really delighted that we've been able to work with Plan International to produce both the guidance document that's been circulated and is available on our website and this workshop. And we're joined by Anne-Sophie Lois, who is both an IGC Global Board member and Plan representative to the United Nations in Geneva and New York. Anne-Sophie has been a champion with the initiative, I think, since it was founded, and is so very familiar with trying to strengthen the ambitions of the network and ensure that the commitments really do make meaningful and lasting change to advance gender equality. She has been working very closely with Anya Gass, who is Advocacy Officer for Plan International. Anya has very kindly helped prepare the guidance document for your commitments, explaining what intersectionality is. And I'm sure that today they're both going to bring this concept to life and make it useful and applicable to you. So thank you so much, Anne-Sophie. We just have a couple more slides, I think, just to explain a little bit about IGC. Most of you are familiar with it now, you're all in the room, but these commitments are really a fundamental and core pillar of our work. Each leader is making both a panel parity pledge and 2 personal commitments, and so applying an intersectional lens to them is what we're here to do. Okay, so these were our hubs, and I think we have representatives from every hub here today. So all the rest of the information is available on our website. Without any further ado, I'm handing over to Anne-Sophie Lois. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fleur, for the presentations and for get us started. So I'm delighted to be here today with you and to really talk about intersectionality, which is an important topic, as we all know. And also I'm happy to see that we have many participants from several of the hubs across the globe. For us, applying an intersectional lens allows us to develop more effective analysis, advocacy, and policies. And we really hope to be able, after this session, to get inspiration to make the IGC commitments stronger, bolder, and really take them to the next level. We believe that gender equality is key, but we need to really push a little bit the boundaries and make them stronger. We hope today to have a very interactive session. There will be, as you see on the different elements of our agenda, we will talk about several things. And we will have a lot of interactive exercises. We will have an introduction to what intersectionality means and look at this together. And then at the end, we will also have some concrete work of crafting some commitments and see how we can transform them to bring this intersectionality lens to it in a practical manner. And of course, there will be possibilities for question and answers in the different sessions. And please feel free to use the chat if you have any concern of a technical nature or any other questions that you would like to raise. We could go to the next slide. So what's your expectations? We actually think that all of the commitments that we have and is really important. And we would like you to put in this chat box, what are you expecting to get out of this session? You dedicate 1 hour in your afternoon. What would you like to have out of it? And we will see if this is what we will be able to provide you with. So please feel free to put in the chat any expectation that you will have around intersectionality today. Do we have any ideas, or is it easier? You could maybe, raise your hand and speak up. That could be a possibility too. So far, I don't see any comments coming up. Build understanding. Yes, we hope that we will be able to do that. What it means also in practice and how to incorporate it. Yes, this is one of the key objectives of this session. Do we have any other comments or wishes of what you would like to have out of it? Yeah, to make it concrete. We will try to make it as concrete as possible through some of the exercises, because sometimes we don't want to keep just in the theories, but also go down to the practical and how do we apply this lens concretely. I think we can go to
I think we also have perhaps a raised hand from Sophia, I saw.
Thank you.
If you'd like to take the mic.
Yeah, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just from my side, we basically have crafted already some of the commitments, but I'm looking maybe to get a bit more guidance on how to fine tune them or make them even more concrete. So that's basically just to seek more confirmation that the path that we have chosen is the correct one.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophia, for that. Are there any more hands? How to use intersectionality in all areas of work. It's also an important one too. And also to understand how intersectionality is relevant to different members of the network and their work. So yes, that's an important one. Maybe in the group work that will also come up. I think we can go to the next slide. So on the objectives, we have the idea is to deepen the understanding of what intersectionality means. So that is one of the requests we do have. Of course, work together to exchange and reflect how to apply in intersectional lens to your commitment and see how we can really strengthen it. We also hope to show some of the tools that were mentioned also by Fleur that we have developed and how you can use them. And as we know, women and men have different experiences based on aspects of their identity, including race, social class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, age, and more. And we need to really move beyond homogeneous categorization and delve into a more nuanced understanding of what gender discrimination and inequality really means. Only then we believe that we can be truly inclusive and gender responsive and also leave no one behind. So with this, no further ado, I would like to give over to Anja, who would help us to go through a very concrete exercise. So now it comes real. Over to you, Anja.
Thanks, Anne-Sophie. So yeah, as we said, we'd like this to be an interactive workshop. It's hopefully not going to be too much of a lecture. We really like to have a discussion around, what does intersectionality mean to each of us. So the first, just to kick us off, the first exercise, and I'd like to invite you to take the mic if you feel comfortable, is to have a look at these photos. We have 10 women / women and girls represented here. From different countries, different regions, different backgrounds. And so the question I'd like to put to you to reflect on, how might these women be treated differently in your society, and what do they have in common? And here I'd like to highlight the "in your society" phrase. I think we each come from different places, from different countries, and we recognize that the experience of different women and girls is going to be different based on where they're situated. So yeah, I'd like to open it up to your reflections on these questions as you look at these photos. And you can be really specific. This particular woman, she might have this type of experience because of this factor of her identity.
Should I kick off? Just to
Go for
get
it.
us going, if you like. I would say what I see here, I see a question of age, and it's interesting to see that. And I bring that up because that's, of course, one of the priorities that we look at within Plan International. I see that there are two girls, and you have one lady, she is older, and then you have several other persons who are more what I would say middle-aged. So I see it's an age dimension here that is interesting.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. Anyone else have any remarks, any observations from the photos that you see here?
I wonder whether some of them might be treated with more respect and others might be seen as maybe with respect, but a bit more vulnerable. So the older lady might be seen as somebody in need of support. The lady in the wheelchair, she might be seen as somebody in need of support. Some may be treated differently with the headscarf expressing their religious identity. Yeah, just a couple of reflections from me. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire.
If I may join as well. Hi, my name is Camila, and I work at the permanent delegation of Mexico to the OECD. It's my first time participating in international gender champion event, so thank you for having me. And one of the things that I think that these girls would be treated differently in Mexico is based on their skin tone. Unfortunately, racism is present, especially it takes form of discrimination against women of indigenous descent and Afro-American women. So it's something that I think would happen if all of these women were together in Mexico right now.
Thank you for that reflection, Camila. Maybe I'll ask, have a prompt on that line. There are two girls or young women here who are wearing headscarves. What might be different in their experience, however, depending on where they were, where they're situated, in which country?
I think there are some views in the UK, if I may, whereby there's been some political leaders who've said, well, if they're wearing a headscarf, they may not have freedom of choice because they see it that those women are being sort of forced into that religion or restrained in their ability to express themselves. Whereas others might see it as a free choice by those women to express their religious identity and to freely choose to adopt that religion.
Absolutely. Yeah, Elise, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Elise. I'm based in Copenhagen, and I work for one of the UN entities called UNOPS. Thanks for having me today. I wanted to say, for me, the two young women with the headscarves also have a different skin tone. So that's like an added layer for me that I think they would get treated differently. What I wanted to say also in terms of what they have in first, the differences, when I see the background behind the women, also I think that influences how I perceive them. Some backgrounds seem more privileged than others, for example. And what they have in common is that, to me, I identify them as women, although they might not all identify themselves as women. And also I noticed that they're all smiling, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what I wanted to share. And I wanted to take advantage and expand on my question earlier on what I'm hoping to get from you and others in this call is they're all women or identified as women. And that's really aligned with what we're trying to do in my organization is achieve gender parity and empowerment and all that. And what I want to know your opinion is, to me, this is also gender and diversity and inclusion in an intersectional way. So we look at women with disability, women who are racialized, women, you know, of all different categories, but what about the men? And I see there's no men that I would identify in this picture, so I hope you're going to touch on that. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Elise. Any other additional observations on these photos? I also would point out that there's one trans woman amongst these photos. At the top right, she's a young trans activist that Plan works with from West Africa. And what I find interesting, when we talk about social identity, there are factors that are visible, there are factors that are invisible, there are factors that are more or less visible, and those factors play a role in how others perceive us. And so, for example, in the context, in the example of a trans woman who may or may not be visibly identifiable as a trans woman, or a woman with a headscarf, or a woman in a wheelchair, there are visible markings of belonging to a certain group, which then have an impact on their experience. But also, there's the element of when those factors are not immediately visible. When we learn that a person belongs to a specific group, it's at that moment that then our perception of them changes. So just kind of pointing out that nuance. Any other comments, any other observations as you look at these photos? Yeah, Irina, go ahead.
Maybe just to add another layer of maybe differentiation between these women is what I realized, I noticed pretty quickly coming from Switzerland maybe, is that I see different levels of maybe wealth or status, and with that comes a different level of education. And I do think that connected to that, certain women might be treated differently with regard to how much respect is given, or with how much respect they are approached.
Absolutely. And I think this also relates to the point that I believe, Elise, you made in terms of the backgrounds that you see here. And I think our brains make certain associations, but when we see backgrounds that look maybe more professional, like it could be a LinkedIn profile, we automatically associate certain meaning to that, and precisely meaning about socioeconomic status. And I think it's interesting because if you take a picture of a woman and you put her, the same woman, you put her in one context with one background, we might associate her with certain characteristics. As soon as we put her in a more professional background, or with a suit jacket, for example, the same woman might be seen very differently because of all those other associations that we make. So anyway, lots of good observations here that we're going to keep coming back to throughout the workshop. But this is just to kind of start us thinking about diversity, about what it means, that we each, in addition to every woman and girl and men and boys, as you rightly point out, Elise, in addition to their gender, there are so many other elements that have an impact on our experience. So the next activity, we're going to go to a mentee quiz. If my screen will cooperate, there we go. So I'll invite you to go to www.mentee.com, and you'll have an opportunity to enter a code, which is 9524414 on the slide. And you'll be invited to, I'm actually going to I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll enter the code in, maybe Sarina, can I ask you to just enter the code in the chat, and I'll stop sharing. Thank you. Stop sharing that, and then I will share. All right. All right. Can you all see the screen with the mentee slide? And give me a thumbs up. Yeah, I see some heads nodding. Great. All right. So the first question is, what does intersectionality mean to you? And this is anonymous. And you should have the option to enter multiple answers. But yeah, go ahead and type a few thoughts on what that word intersectionality means to you. What are the associations that come to mind? All right, I see the answers are starting to come in. It means there are many things, yeah. Overlapping identities, change in how one is approached and treated depending on what is the most apparent identity. Yeah, exactly. Linked to what I was sharing before about the visibility of those characteristics. And the need for a holistic approach. Yeah, precisely. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so to enter in your thoughts here. First thing that comes to mind, variety. Yeah, so I guess this is a bit in line with the first comment that, we're many things. Taking into account all identifying or shaping characteristics of a person, not just his or her gender, when creating equal opportunities. Yeah, precisely. All right, we're going to move to, and I know not everyone has set in here, but we're going to, in the interest of time, move to the second question. If you had lived experiences, not one size fits all exactly. So that's linked to the other comments around the shaping, taking all different shaping characteristics into account. If you have anything else that you would like to add that you didn't get a chance to, you can go ahead and throw it in the chat. How do I? There we go. No. Okay, good. Oh, okay. So you've already done both questions. Great. So why is intersectionality important? Why is it something we should think about? That's the question that you were invited to respond to. So policies and programs need to be differentiated to accommodate different needs. We need to better understand difference and not be afraid to talk about it based on our own positionality and identity. Yeah, exactly. Intersectionality ensures that everyone is included in efforts towards achieving gender equality. People's experiences are not homogeneous, and unless this is recognized and addressed, people cannot participate in an equal and equitable manner. It's the reality of our world, exactly. Otherwise, we can't be inclusive, exactly. So there's a lot here about inclusivity. And can I scroll down here? Here we go. As COVID-19 is demonstrating, some women and men are benefiting from more flexible working and home office, yeah, while schools are open. And many are being made more vulnerable by economic loss, exactly. So it's this deeper analysis of which are the factors that are making certain groups of people more or less vulnerable. All right, great. Thank you so much for participating in that. I'm going to stop sharing the mentee results, and we're going to get on. I'm going to pass back to Anne-Sophie, who will share some of our thoughts around intersectionality. Here we go. All right. Can you see my PowerPoint again? No, nope. I haven't shared it yet. There we go. Should be working now. Are you able to see the PowerPoint now? Great. All right, Anne-Sophie, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. No, and also thank for everyone for your different points coming in here. This is, I would say, a quite good example of what is intersectionality, because it shows a multiple of identities and a multitude of social characteristics. But also from what you were saying, there were more things to this. We have more things to maybe include than those that are mentioned here. Here we do have race, sexuality, gender, class, ability, language, age, culture, and education. What are some additional ones? If you like, you can, put in the box, in the chat box, things that you would like to add to this. You're writing. That's good. Professional status. Fantastic. What else do we have? What else do we have that we could actually complement the picture of intersectionality? Nationality, yes. What else could we have? And if you don't know how to write on the screen, which is a more technical thing, for some of us, you can feel free to put also in the chat box. Gender identity, immigration status, that's very, very important. Which gives us a different combination here. So actually, we many times would call what we see here some of the inner dimensions. But we do also have external dimensions. And some of them you have mentioned here. They are, for example, the education level, as you were saying. It could be accent. Somebody raised the issue of income. What is your social status in that way? Where do you live? Which language are you speaking? Could be another factor. And then we have another layer apart from, so to say, the inner and the external dimension. We have the layer which we many times have in our own organization or in our network. We do have something like titles, work location, seniorities, and it could be also managerial status. So we add other layers. And all of those elements are social constructs. And based on them, there are risks, challenges, and advantages. And it's depending on how they play out that we will see how things move forward. And that's, so to say, the intersectionality mixture here. We will go to the next one where we continue a little bit on this journey on what is intersectionality. You can go to the next slide. And on this one, I think this one is an interesting one, what it is. So this concept is around 30 years old, this concept. It was Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, who's an American lawyer and civil rights advocate and philosopher, and also a leading scholar of critical race theory, who developed this theory of intersectionality. Today, she's working as a full-time professor at UCLA School of Law and Columbia Law School, where she is specialized in race and gender issues. And she actually, the core of what she's saying, she said that race, class, gender, and other individual characteristics, they intersect with one another and they overlap. So it's really this notion of intersection and overlapping that are core to what we're talking here or about today. On the last paragraph here, we have what we could say kind of a definition of what intersectionality is. And it's focused that individuals have different lived experiences that are based on various characteristics and aspects of their identity. So let us go in a little bit to the next level of the intersectionality. We can go to the next slide, Anja. So here, sometimes we group people to facilitate. Our brain works in that way. It's easier to fix them. Okay, they are this category, they are that category, but it's more complex to find about identity, and we do make generalization. But as we have seen with these discussions so far, each individual may have many identities, and they impact how they interact, how they are perceived by others. For example, we know that women and girls from minority and marginalized groups are more likely to face, for example, gender-based violence. We know that. So here in an example like this, we have the gender, so they are females. We have the age, it might be a girl. And we have the ethnic group, they might be coming from a minority. So all of those layers together could put them in a more favor or a more disadvantaged situation. And we need to look at these overlapping identities and see how they are interconnected. And they also sometimes, as with this example I said, will result in multiple oppressions. And also we need to look at what are the different lived experiences. Let's move to the next slide. And here some of the areas why this is so important. Because of course, if we do not take into account what is a lived experience and what is the specific situation of people, the policy work that we do might be less effective because they lose out, they fall through the cracks, and we have not identified what the real issues are. Maybe we didn't consult with them either. We are basing it on our assumption of a certain category. So that is really important. And to address for reality, we have an example here, which was actually a study from McKinsey on women at workplace. And they saw that women of color, lesbian and bisexual women, and women with disabilities, they tend to be worse off than the broad other women's with other identity traits. And for example, that played out very badly when it comes to the gender gap, in which they really, had a very lower advantages when it comes to both position and salaries, as we have in the example here. And the last one is no one left behind. This is our SDG mantra that we all use all the time. But I think it's really important that we really look at those elements, because without doing it, people are falling through the cracks. And we hope that this session today, with the more concrete work that we will do, will give you some of the tools. How can we actually work and develop policy, which is many of our daily work, to see that no one will actually be left behind. And with this, I would like to give over to Anja, and we will start looking at some concrete work around the commitment and how we can strengthen them with this lens and some of the tools. Over to you, Anja.
Thanks, Anne-Sophie. So you may have seen in the emails that went out from the IGC Secretariat this two-pager that we developed together with them on some of the guidelines on our 2021 in particular commitments, but overall with some of the elements that we've already brought and some questions and guidance for that. So we're going to be going through that now. I've broken it up into 3 steps that we can kind of keep in mind as we're working on our 2021 commitments. The first is analyze. And this is kind of a bigger question, and it's an invitation for us all to step back a little bit from the detail of the actual writing of the commitments and actually analyze what is the situation of different groups of women and of men in our organization. To ask ourselves, from a programmatic perspective, how is an issue affecting girls and younger women and older women differently, for example? How is a particular issue in our internal management affecting different groups of women and girls differently? To also ask ourselves why those differences exist. What are the root causes? We don't want cosmetic solutions, and I think all of us here are hoping to really get to the root causes of some of the discrimination that different groups of women and girls are facing. And in order to do that, we need to understand, well, what is driving those forms of discrimination. So that's kind of the analysis step. The next step is to specify. And so this is now, in all of our attempts to make our commitments as smart as possible. we know that the first letter of that, or the first word of that acronym is specific. So we're trying to be specific in the sense that we'd like to be specific about how are the changes that we're seeking to make in our organizations, how are those going to affect different groups of women and girls. We have a tool that we use, and it's one that's being used quite a lot in the humanitarian space in particular, which is called age, gender, and diversity. And it's kind of an easy way to see if you've kind of, gotten all of the different, factors and taken into account the different factors. So we have the A, which is age, so looking at girls, young women, so kind of the middle age there, and older women. And do our commitments take that aspect into account? Gender, that's kind of the baseline, obviously here, but I think there's also an invitation to think about LGBTQ+, and how are our efforts to achieve gender equality through our commitments actually taking into account that those groups of people. And then diversity. And diversity is a bit of the catch-all phrase for lots of the different other elements of identity, whether it's religion, ability, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, all those different ones that we talked about before. Are those being reflected? And so I think this is something that you can use a little bit as a checklist to see, okay, am I taking into account these different elements? And finally, step 3 is modify. So take all of that work that you've done, the background, the analysis, and the kind of drilling down into the specifics, and actually just modify the commitment. So we're going to now break up into groups. I see that we are 16 participants, so maybe 3 breakout groups. Sarina, if you can help me with that. I think 3 groups should be good. Randomly generated, so you'll just be assigned to a group. Anne-Sophie and I will go also to a breakout room, and I'll maybe bounce between the 2 groups just to provide any guidance. I will be sending you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to send you a link to a document that has 3 made up commitments. And the exercise that you're going to be doing in groups is to basically modify them to take into account intersectionality, to see, okay, do I have the age, do I have the diversity, how can this be strengthened, really to take that into account. And then when we come back, we'll kind of compare notes and see, do we, if we have time, how can we even strengthen these further.